All right, here's the good news. David Fletcher is a good hitter, a good defender, and a great piece for the Angels in 2023. In fact, David compares to some of the great Angel players in the last 20 years in the infield. And that's why today we're going to tell you why you're wrong about David Fletcher. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And John and I thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Every show is free and available on all platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And the best way to help us out is by giving us a rate and a review. And those watching on YouTube, make sure that you're subscribed and click that bell to be notified every time a new episode drops.
Happy Tuesday to you, and thank you for being here with us for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John. And John, for those that are watching on the YouTube side, I just want to thank you for my Christmas gift. John got me a spit guard for my microphone. Is that what it's called?
It's called a pop filter. A pop filter.
So
all your
filter.
P's and your B's aren't going to explode in the ears of our listeners and viewers. So
they're all going to say you're welcome to Johnny. Thank you to Johnny. You're welcome from Johnny because this is a gift. So thank you for that Christmas gift, and Merry late Christmas to all those that are watching and listening. It's awesome to have you here with us.
Yeah, we hope you enjoyed your holidays and got to spend it with the people you care about the most. And we certainly did. And it looks like we both got some new Angel swag. So how about that? We're lucked out this Christmas season. But hey, listen, we're longtime Angel fans, and we wanted to have this conversation today around David Fletcher.
Yeah.
For some reason, he's received a lot of hate in the last few months because he might be playing a lot of shortstop this season. And we know that the middle of the order, the roster has been kind of rounded out by Perry Minasian, but the Angels didn't go out and directly get a shortstop to improve that position. And everybody's freaking out and thinking that we're not going to make the playoffs if David Fletcher is your starting shortstop. But here's the thing. Let's set the stage for where we are now. Mike, why don't you take us through where we are?
All right. We were in need of starting pitching.
Mm-hmm.
We were in need of positional depth. We were in need of a bullpen piece, one or two pieces, and a shortstop. And we went and got Tyler Anderson. We were the first team to make a move. We were all really excited about that. 3 years. And he is a guy that we're thrilled to have because we had not signed a starting pitcher for longer than 1 year in, I think, 10 years, right?
Yeah.
And so he's going to be probably our second starter in that rotation, slots in right after Shohei Ohtani. We're still looking for that sixth starter, and it might be a starter that's in-house and could be somebody that is coming back this year, like a Griffin Canning or maybe a Jonathan Diaz or a Chase Silseth. All of those names are on the table. Perry was interviewed last week, and he said that there are some positional people. There are some people in the organization that we think could actually fill some of these significant roles in the rotation and in the infield.
Now, Nate Eovaldi is also a name that's been out there for a while, been rumored to the Halo, so that could be an exciting thing for us as well. That would certainly bump probably Jose Suarez to the sixth spot in that case. Mike, we addressed the infield with Gio Urshela, who can fill in at third and second and first, sometimes short, helping at the positional depth. Then Brandon Drury was added, somebody that you and I have wanted for a long time. He can play third, second, first base, the outfield, and then he went on the record saying, I want to compete for shortstop in spring training. Several arms were added to the bullpen, signed Carlos Estevez, Justin Garza. There was a lot of minor league deals, and there's lots of minor league depth as well. So we're talking Ben Joyce and Eric Torres, not to mention C-Rod's coming back too. So that could be another bullpen piece. So I think as far as the bullpen goes, I think we're in pretty good shape. Finally, Hunter Renfroe shores up the outfield by having an outfield of him and Trout and Taylor Ward, and then possibly Moniak or Joe Adell being the fourth outfielder in that case.
Yeah. And then, of course, the shortstop position. It's not been directly addressed by Perry Minasian by going and getting somebody, right? Like there were the four big names out there. Correa was out there, although we're not sure where he's going as of yet, right? I don't know if you saw the tweet that said that they did the MRI, and what they found in his leg, the problem in his leg was they found the buzzer from 2017 World Series.
There's the buzzer.
Yeah. Xander Bogaerts was out there. I would have loved to have Xander Bogaerts on this team. Of course, he signed for a big deal in San Diego. Trey Turner signed for a big deal. So did Dansby. All of them were at least 7 years. Dansby's was the shortest. And so as a longtime Angel fan, I think that there's a part of us that really wanted a shortstop, but then there's a part of us that didn't want to go into this long-term deal because it really has hurt us in the past. And if we look at the past few contracts that we've handed out, it hasn't been too great. I mean, Albert Pujols is great. We love Albert Pujols. However, his 10 years with us was not that great. And then he got DFA'd, right? And then there's the Josh Hamilton deal that we really didn't like. The last really big deal that we handed out that I can remember to a really big superstar was Vladimir Guerrero. And that one worked out great for us. But ever since then, we really haven't had a big signing that we've been really excited about, obviously outside of Mike Trout, but he was already a part of our organization. And so as a longtime Angel fan, I'm kind of torn on this, but I think that we made a good decision to not go with a big contract in so many years with each of these 4 guys, even though these 4 guys are really, really good.
Now, look, we totally understand that signing any of those 4 guys would have made an immediate improvement to the team. So we understand the frustration in not securing one of those guys because compared to what the Angels ran out last year, it's almost impossible not to improve on last year. In fact, let's look at the rankings for shortstop per Fangraphs. For the Angels at shortstop. They were 26th in the league in Ks with 181. The best was the Cubs, 72 strikeouts. That was mostly Nico Hoerner. 22nd in K percentage at 22.7. Again, least was Cubs with 11.5%. That's Nico Hoerner. They were 22nd in batting average. The best was the Dodgers, of course, at 298, predominantly Trey Turner. 25th in RBIs with 62. Wow. Now, Francisco Lindor of the Mets was responsible for most of the Mets getting 107 RBIs at the position. Yeah. They were 29th in weighted runs created plus at 68, Mike. That's 42% less effective than league average. In fact, Bo Bichette was responsible for a 131 weighted runs created plus with Toronto for the most part. Because he played the most time there. The Angels were 27th at the shortstop position in walk rate at 4.3%. The best was Seattle at 11.3 with JP Crawford most of the time. 29th in on-base percentage at 271. Get this, the best on-base percentage came from Boston at 370. That was primarily Xander Bogaerts.
Yep.
29th in slugging percentage at 327. The best, again, was Toronto at 472, mostly due to Bo Bichette. Finally, they were 27th in Fangraphs WAR at 1.1. The best was the Mets at 6.7 because of mostly Francisco Lindor there. So those are the players who played at the positions with the Angels. We're going to name those in just a second. These are their total stats from the year. So it's not specifically their games at short, but except for Squid, he did play all of his games at shortstop. But these are the guys that were responsible for the rankings for the Angels at the shortstop position. Let's get into the stats, Mike.
Well, let's talk about Squid. He played 124 games, mostly at the shortstop position, 199 Ks. Doesn't it feel like he struck out 199 times?
Yep, I think I saw all 199 of them.
Yes. And his K rate was 34.1, a 196 average, 28 RBIs, a 50 WRC plus, and 100s average. So he is 50% below average as a shortstop at the plate, a 4.3% walk rate, 236 on base, 304 slugging, and a 0.3 Fangraphs WAR. And that's in 124 games. Then there's our boy, David Fletcher. We're going to talk about him a lot on this show. 36 games and mostly at short and second base and 16 Ks, 7% K rate, get a 255 average, 17 RBIs, a 75 WRC plus, 3.1% walk rate, 288 on base, 333 slugging, and a 0.7 Fangraphs WAR. Johnny, talk about Luis Rengifo, because he didn't play too often at shortstop, played 19 games there. What numbers did he put up when he was there?
Yeah, for the whole season, he had 79 Ks, a 15.5% K rate, a 264 average, 52 RBIs, a 103 weighted runs created plus, a 3.3% walk rate, .294 on base percentage, .429 slugging, and a 1.6 F-WAR, Fangraphs WAR. Then we had Tyler Wade there for 19 games, and over the course of his 19 games, he had 33 Ks, 20.2% K rate, a .218 average, 8 RBIs, 55 weighted runs created plus, 6.1% walk rate, .303 on base percentage, .330 slugging, and a negative .0.6 F-WAR. Finally, Livan Soto had 18 games. He had 13 strikeouts, a 22% K rate, a .400 average, 9 RBIs, 84 weighted runs created plus, 3.4% walk rate, .414 on base percentage, .582 slugging, and a 0.7 F-WAR. Now, these percentages are over 100% sometimes because these guys slid over to short during a game.
Sure.
So they played there. They might have shared time, but here's the breakdown. Squid contributed to 76.5% of those stats at shortstop.
Okay.
David Fletcher contributed to 22%. Luis Rengifo contributed 12%. And Tyler Wade contributed 12. Livan Soto contributed 11. So we know where the bulk of the quote-unquote production or lack thereof came from.
We all saw.
And that was Squid. He's a great defender, but a weak bat. Right. And the amount of injuries and holes the Halos had, they were exposed at this position. And should the Angels not make a move for a shortstop, and David Fletcher is your shortstop opening day, here's why you shouldn't have to worry. Mike?
Well, he is he was not responsible. Let me read that right. He was not responsible for the high K rate, and he was not responsible for the low average. And was he responsible for low RBIs? Well, 17 of his RBIs across 36 games would equate to 76.5 RBIs. So a conservative estimate for him last year would have been about 60. In 2019, he had 49 RBIs. 2020, he had 18 and 49 games. And so he earned more in a shorter amount of time in 2022. Of note, he earned 47 RBIs in 2021. Now, Johnny, talk about Dansby just as a comparison.
Well, Dansby played all 162 games, and here's why we want to compare. He hit 25 home runs, had 96 RBIs, but that's Dansby Swanson. That's right. Dansby Swanson, right? Now, Fletcher, is he responsible for the low walk rate and on-base percentage? I think so. I think that he was hurt for his first 14 games of the season. When he returned in late July, his on-base percentage was .303, and he still didn't walk a lot. He only had 4 walks. Now, is he responsible for the low slugging percentage? He slugged .333 last season in 36 games, and when he came back from the injury on July 28th, he slugged .348, and before that, he slugged .268 while he was hurt. So he had to bunt for several of those games and swing one-handed when he came back at 1.2 because he got hit.
That was awful to watch.
But that's a position he should not have been in. So let's look at what he's done in the past. In 80 games in 2018, he slugged .363. In 154 games in 2019, he slugged .384. In 49 games in 2020, it's shortened, but it was a .425 slugging percentage. Remember, Toronto's .472 slugging was the best in the league. So a .360 to .380 from David Fletcher, that's not too bad, Mike.
Well, yeah. I don't think it's too bad at all. In fact, David Fletcher is not a power guy. And so we can't expect him to have this huge slugging percentage, right? He's not Dansby. He's not Correa. And Johnny, according to us, that's actually okay. And we're going to talk about that coming up.
Yeah. Coming up on Locked On Angels, we're going to tell you exactly who David Fletcher is, compare him to similar players of the past, and what he's going to do well for the Halos in 2023.
Locked On Angels is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From pro football to college bowl season to the basketball season, they've got you covered at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. You can head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts.
We want to thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen today. And for your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, there's a lot of teams making the playoffs in the NFL over this last weekend, so you can catch up on that. Go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with Locked On's local experts and insights that you can only get from Locked On Sports Today. It's available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.
When David Fletcher first came up, Johnny, a lot of people compared him to some of the Angel greats of the last 20 years. And we've picked 3 of those players because David is very comparable to each of those players. Now, hear us out before we actually get into this, that we're not saying David Fletcher is these players. There's just a comparison there, and we'll talk a bit about each. John, why don't you start with maybe one of the greatest Angel second basemen? That's Adam Kennedy, AK.
AK, baby. Yeah, AK had a career 272 average, 80 home runs, 682 runs, 571 RBIs, a 327 on base percentage, 384 slugging, and a 711, OPS. But Mike, his best season with the Angels was in fact 2002. He had a 110 OPS plus that season. So here's the numbers here, and we're going to give you each of these guys' best seasons because it's important to compare to what David Fletcher has done in the past. So in 144 games, Adam Kennedy had a 312 average, 7 home runs, 65 runs scored, 52 RBIs, 19 walks, a 345 on base percentage, a 449 slugging, and a 795 OPS. Talk about David Eckstein.
David Eckstein. I'm going to do the X right now.
There you go.
There it is. I missed that guy. He was so good for us. His career was really great, but his best season with the Angels was actually, 2002, John.
Imagine that.
He had a 101 OPS plus, 152 games, hit 293, 8 home runs, 107 runs scored, 63 RBIs, 45 walks, a 363 on base percentage, 388 slugging, and a 752 OPS. Again, loved Eckstein, loved him at the top of the order. Now, here's a player that you're going to talk about that, I'll be honest, I was a bit irritated with when he was with the Angels, but now looking back, I'm like, this guy actually was really a really great piece for the Halos. And I'm talking about mighty Maicer Izturis.
Maicer Izturis had his best season with the Angels in 2009 with a 109 OPS plus. He played in 114 games. He had a 300 average, 8 home runs, 74 runs scored, 65 RBIs, 35 walks, a 359 on base percentage, a 434 slugging, and a 794 OPS. Mike, for the sake of argument, you and I are going to use David Fletcher's 2019 season. So far, his best season. If you were to look at 2020, he has better stats, but it was only 60 games and he played in 40-something of those. So 2019 is a season that we think he can match in 2023 if he's healthy and back to form, which he hasn't been healthy since before 2022. And even the second half of 2021, he was kind of playing out of his shoes a bit. You and I have argued that with no Mike Trout, with no Anthony Rendon, with guys getting injured, David Fletcher was put into a position he shouldn't have been in as one of the few good hitters on the team in 2021.
Right.
But let's look at 2019. He had a 95 OPS plus, played in 154 games. He had a 290 average, 6 home runs, 83 runs, 49 RBIs, 55 walks. Keep that in mind. A 350 on base percentage, a 384 slugging, and a 734 OPS. Now let's compare this 2019 season of David Fletcher to the best seasons from AK, David Eckstein, and Maicer Izturis.
Well, his 290 average in 2019 matches Eckstein's 02 average, pretty close to it, 293. Fletcher's total home runs fall 2 short of Eckstein and Maicer Izturis' best season, and 1 short of Adam Kennedy in 2002. And then Fletch scored 83 runs, and that's right in line with what Maicer Izturis did, and right in line with what AK and Eckstein did. In fact, he scored more runs than Maicer's best season. And in 2002, when AK was with the team and had a great year, he only scored 65 runs. Eckstein had 107. And so Fletch had 83 in 2019. So he was a guy that was getting on base and was actually getting knocked in and scoring runs for this team. His RBIs in 2019, 49. This was the lowest of the 4 players in their best seasons, but it really depends on who's going to be in front of him. And if Fletch is going to be somebody who's sitting at the bottom of the lineup, all you're looking for Fletch to do is just make contact and get on base, right? You're not looking for him to knock in runs like they did in 2020 and in 2021. And then, Johnny, talk about Fletch getting on base and specifically drawing the walk.
Well, this is the biggest criticism, I think, of the last 2 years of David Fletcher. He has not taken a lot of walks. And so when I went back and saw that he walked 55 times in 2019, I was like, that's the guy that we need back. And I also think it's the guy that we can get back. I think Marcus Thames is going to have a big part in that. And so let me run down and compare his 55 walks from his best season. Maicer only had 35 in his best season. Eckstein had 45. And get this, Adam Kennedy in 2002 only had 19 walks.
Yeah, and can I just speak to that real quick? I know a lot of Angel fans are quick to forget because we look at Adam Kennedy as God in the flesh, right? Like, I mean, we just love him at second base. He's awesome. He's an Angel Hall of Famer. But there was a lot of complaints about AK leading into that 02 season. And even after 02, when the Angels didn't make the playoffs in 03, and then they were pretty successful 04, 05, 06, 07, and on, there's a lot of conversation about AK and should they get a different second baseman. That was the rise of Dustin Pedroia in Boston. And so people were like, man, if we could just have a Dustin Pedroia, this team would be so well-rounded. So Angel fans who have been longtime Angel fans, let's not forget that there were some people that were harping on AK, and it's similar to what they're saying about David Fletcher today, John.
Absolutely. Mike, Fletcher's 2019 on-base percentage was .350. It's about the same as Adam Kennedy's .345, lower than Maicer's .359, and lower than Eckstein's .363. Two more stats for you. .384 slugging matches Eckstein's 2002 slugging of .388. And then finally, Fletcher's .734 OPS ranks the lowest of all four of these guys. But it goes back to getting on base and taking walks and doing that well. But bottom line, Mike, I think some of the best teams, 2002, 2009, they had a guy like David Fletcher. And we see that with AK. We see it with Eckstein. We see it with Izturis. And a well-rounded team can be successful with somebody like David Fletcher playing shortstop. And here's the thing. I don't think he's going to play 162 games at shortstop either. We have plenty of options. But, Mike, you got to watch Adam Kennedy. You got to watch Eckstein. You got to watch Maicer Izturis for the most part. I mean, how do you compare David Fletcher to those guys and the roles that they played on their teams?
Well, think back to when the Angels made the World Series. When they actually got there, they played the Twins in the championship and in the league championship. And everybody remembers that 3-homer game from AK.
Sure.
Here's the thing that we don't remember. We were all shocked that Adam Kennedy hit 3 home runs in that game because we weren't expecting him to do that. We were expecting the big dogs to actually carry us. And that's what happened all season long. We had the big dogs carry us, but there were moments where these young guys, these middle infielders came through. I can think of Eckstein hitting a couple of grand slams that season. I can think of AK playing really great defense and making a couple of really clutch moments, clutch hits for the Angels. And so the biggest takeaway that I have from those teams in years past is that they weren't the guy that everybody relied upon. And that's what I think we miss when we try to go get a big-time shortstop like a Correa or a Dansby or a Bogarts or a Turner, is we don't need those guys on this team because we have them.
We got them.
And what Fletch is a piece. He's on base for them. He's playing great defense, and he's coming through when those guys are unable to come through. That's why we remember AK. That's why we remember Eckstein. And that's why that season in 09 for Izturis is so memorable, because he came off the bench and suddenly he was clutch, knocking in runs when we needed it. And so that he got his nickname that year from Rex Hudler, Mighty Meister. And so I think what we need to see in David Fletcher is that he is an AK and a David Eckstein more than he is a Dansby and a Correa. And I think we got to be really okay with that, because I think that that's the perfect piece for this Angel team in 2023.
So as we talk about 2023, we want to ask the question, what is David Fletcher going to bring to the table? What's he going to bring to the Halos next season? Now that we've gone over the stats, let's talk about David Fletcher, who we have in him as a player, and why you shouldn't freak out and complain if he's playing shortstop this year. And before I continue, let me just say, I'm sure there's lots of people who agree and are like, yes, we're on the same page. But we're talking specifically to the doubters, the David doubters. Don't doubt David. Triple D. Wait a minute. Don't doubt David.
Don't doubt David. Just say the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing that's going to be necessary for Dave in this next year is that he's got to stay healthy. And all expectations, all indications are that he is going to be healthy. And I think he can return to that 2019 form, Johnny. I think he can even be better than that because 2020, he looked really good. That's when we were really starting to notice that, hey, this Fletch kid actually is a great piece for our team. And as a role player, we've already mentioned it, he's not going to be counted on like Ohtani and Trout are going to be counted on. And you even talked about it, and we've talked about it before. We counted on him in 2021. We needed him to come through with all of the injuries. And I think that actually maybe messed with his mind and maybe even messed with his swing a little bit because we needed him to be who he wasn't. And I think this season we're going to see him and who he is, not just on the offensive side, John, but he is a great defender. Talk about those defensive stats.
Yeah, he is a perfectly capable shortstop defensively. I know that we don't have a guy whose baseball card is going to say Angels shortstop in 2023. However, if David Fletcher is there, you can be comfortable with him there because he's got a 2.0 ultimate zone rating, or UZR, and that comes from Fangraphs. It's kind of a culmination of everything they do well in terms of range and defense and preventing runs from scoring. And he's been at the shortstop position in his career 865 innings. So he's got a 2.0 in 865 innings. Now, that falls quite short of Dansby Swanson's amount of time at shortstop. He's got 7,089 innings.
Just a bit
that's
more.
about 10 times more than David Fletcher. But here's the thing. Keep that number in mind as I read the stat to you. But Dansby has a career UZR, ultimate zone rating, of negative 2.3. And again, that's 10 times the amount of time played as David Fletcher. But in total, his career UZR at shortstop is a negative number. But here's another comparison. Carlos Correa had his best defensive season in 2021, and he had a 2.9 UZR at shortstop, and that was in 1,304 and 2/3 innings. So a full season of playing shortstop, he had a 2.9. David Fletcher's career total almost equates to a full season, and that's a 2.0. And I think that we can rely on him very well. And then perhaps most importantly, Mike, here's a stat that I'm really excited about, and a fact that we all need to remember. David Fletcher is a table setter. Yeah. He's the guy who gets on base for the likes of Ohtani and Trout and Rendon and Jared Walsh. Listen to this. He scored 20 runs in his short time in 2022. 6 of those came from Ohtani batting him in. 6 of those came from Rengifo batting him in. And 3 of those came from Trout batting him in. In 2021, Ohtani drove him in 20 times, Walsh 12 times, Rendon 8 times. In 2020, he scored 31 runs, and Trout drove him in 10 times. Rendon did it 6 times. Then in 2019, again, the best full season he's ever had, he had 83 runs. 15 of those were from Mike Trout. 12 were from Ohtani. 12 were from Pujols. And then about 4 to 6 runs each from the rest of the regulars here. But are you seeing a trend there, my friend? Are you seeing who's driving in David Fletcher? It's Ohtani. It's Trout. It's Rendon. Previously, it was Pujols, who now we have Jared Walsh as the guy playing first base and driving people in. So as long as David Fletcher can get on base and be driven in by those guys, he's fulfilling his role on this team perfectly.
Yeah, and he's not going to play 162 games at shortstop.
No.
He's not going to be Eric Ibar. He's not going to be Andrelton Simmons. He's not even going to be Eckstein, right? But he is going to be a helpful piece like an AK and like a Maicer Izturis, because that's what winning teams have. And the thing that we didn't even address, John, is how the OPS was so lopsided last season. And I think having David Fletcher at the bottom of this order is actually going to help the top of this order, Ward, Ohtani, Trout, because he's going to be on base more, whether it be drawing a walk or just making contact and moving runners over, but actually being in scoring position so that the big bats can knock him in. Hey, David Fletcher is going to be a great player for us this year. And if you don't think so, we just told you why you're wrong.
Well, that's the thing is, if you have to reframe your mind from getting another superstar like Dansby, Correa, Bogarts, it's unfortunate that we missed out. And again, the team automatically becomes better with those guys on this team.
Sure.
However, we shouldn't panic. We shouldn't complain. We shouldn't be upset if David Fletcher is spending time at shortstop and being this type of player, being exactly who he is for the Halos, is going to yield success. And we believe he's going to get back to 2019 David Fletcher, and maybe even better than that, considering that they have improved the middle of this roster, and he's going to be exactly who he's supposed to be for the Halos in 2023.
Thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen today. Now for your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. They're sharing some of the biggest stories of the day, instant reactions from those games, big game recaps, and of course the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
So what do you guys think? Do you agree about this David Fletcher assessment, or are we still wrong and you're pointing the finger back at us and saying, here's why you're wrong about Fletcher? Get at us at Locked On Angels on Twitter, or at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Let's have a discussion, but please, before you jump into the discussion, make sure that you've listened to the full thing, because I think we made a pretty good argument for who David Fletcher is. Mike, what do we have on deck for tomorrow's show?
Well, you and I are of the opinion, have the belief that the Angels are a playoff team in 2023, and we are going to share why you should believe that too. That's tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
Looking forward to that conversation, and we hope you'll be back here on Wednesday. We'll be doing shows Wednesday and Friday from this week onward, and then we'll be back to Monday, Wednesday, Friday next week. But until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
We hope that you'll join us again tomorrow. Until then, thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you next time.